In our concern for human impact on climate change, we often focus on industrial emissions, and rightly so. But we have to understand that our agricultural practices are contributing to almost 1/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions. We badly need to turn this around. We need to do more than simply grow crops with our agriculture. In the fight against climate change, we can have a very good result by leading with agriculture. Currently, close to 1 in 7 people go to bed hungry each night. The global population is expected to pass 9 billion by 2050. And we face extreme risks from human-induced climate change, with negative impacts on agricultural productivity in many parts of the world, while at the same time, agriculture itself, by its use of fertilizer, transportation-intensive distribution, conversion of forest land to fields, and the consequent release of soil carbon, is also partially responsible for changing the composition of our atmosphere.
It is climate change. In the last 5 years, we have had several cases and several situations within agriculture, and especially with maize, that have caused very important damage to our production.
The outlook looks bleak. Much needed increases in agricultural productivity will lead to the release of additional greenhouse gases, further accelerating climate change. And in turn, this threatens global food production itself. The conclusion seems to be clear. We cannot address climate change without significantly changing our agricultural system. A climate-smart agriculture system must provide a triple win: increasing productivity while reducing agricultural emissions and sequestering additional carbon in soils and vegetation on a very large scale.
We do see is that the amount of carbon that is present in your soil is a lot higher in conservation agriculture than in the conventional practice.
People all over the world are investigating what climate-smart agriculture could look like in Ethiopia, in China, in Mexico, in Rwanda. Humanity is facing an urgent challenge. We have a choice. Agriculture can be part of the problem, or it can be a big part of the solution. To understand how we're affecting the climate, we have to consider how the atmosphere was formed. We often value agricultural crops, but then we look at the natural vegetation, we don't think it's worth anything at all. Long before agriculture, plants were working to transform the Earth into the habitable planet that we have inherited. The best evidence we have suggests that at the beginning of evolutionary time, microbiologic organisms began to photosynthesize in the oceans, releasing oxygen into the atmosphere and enabling life to emerge on land. As biological life colonized the entire surface of the Earth, soils began to accumulate, building the very base for agriculture. Plants, through photosynthesis, have generated, constantly filtered, and renewed the Earth's atmosphere. And as each generation of life has given up its body, created the living soils in which we are farming. We are only alive because of the coevolution between plants and animals. For 10 millennia, agriculture has contributed to human impact that is changing the Earth's climate. By removing the natural vegetation and exposing the soils to the sun, the wind, and the rain. Most of the Earth's land, which is suitable for farming, is already under cultivation. With a production system and transportation using tractors, trailer trucks, ships of gigantic size, and airplanes, all heavily relying on fossil fuels. Some people get the food, while others face the consequences. There is a terrible disparity in our world. Strengthening local markets and relying more on local produce can increase food security and reduce emissions from distribution.
The projections are the developing world is going to be particularly vulnerable to hot temperatures, and those hot temperatures will particularly affect wheat. And so it's vital that we find within the next few years sources of resistance to those increased temperatures so that that can be bred into the current varieties of wheat to make wheat farming more sustainable.
Livestock provides food and livelihoods to some of the world's poorest people, especially in drylands. But overstocking, overgrazing, and using the land beyond its carrying capacities vastly degrade the landscape. Large-scale industrial meat production, serving mainly the affluent, also has a huge effect on global ecological health. All told, 33% of all cropland outputs are used to feed livestock. And it takes 7 energy units of plant protein to create only 1 unit of meat, meaning we need vastly more agricultural land if everyone eats meat. According to the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization, livestock are the world's largest source of methane gas, a very dangerous greenhouse gas. There are climate-smart alternatives in animal husbandry, such as rotational grazing, pen feeding of livestock, and reducing per capita meat consumption patterns. The effective treatment of animal manure, together with recycling of crop waste, can also help reduce agricultural emissions and provide very interesting additional benefits. Methane released into the atmosphere is dangerous. But methane used as a fuel, known as biogas, can greatly lower agricultural emissions in a number of ways. Over the past 3 decades, the Chinese have pioneered the use of biogas and have shown how using this to replace firewood protects biodiversity and biomass, while reducing greenhouse gas emissions and improving the lives of the people. Biogas is great for cooking. Biogas can light up a room, and the resulting sediments can enrich the agricultural fields, increasing agricultural productivity. And soils are the second largest carbon sink on Earth after the oceans. Enriching the soil with organic matter, compost, and the sediments from biogas are all active ways that agriculture can sequester carbon. Just imagine how much carbon could be sequestered by an intact vegetative cover. Ethiopia gives an example how engaged individuals are working to make this happen.
The objectives of the activity is to rehabilitate the degraded land, or in another way, to increase land availability by controlling the gullies. This is one objective. The other way is to protect the environment by itself, not to exceed. The other thing is to upgrade the land productivity and fertility to overall satisfy their food crops and to provide forage for livestock.
Ensuring that individuals and communities have this knowledge allows them to participate in positive action. Communities that adopt these methods can achieve dramatic results.
In our planning, 6 million plants are prepared in our nursery sites in 1 year.
Restoration ecology can employ large numbers of people in soil creation, in nurseries, in tree planting and conservation. Provide meaningful work that is of urgent importance. China has become a leader in restoring biomass and has accomplished this at very large scale in the Lus Plateau.
The goal was to give a hat to the hilltops, give a belt to the hills as well as shoes at the base. The hat meant that the top of these hills had to be replanted with trees. The belt meant that terraces had to be built to be used for crop planting and also for trees. The shoes were the dams which we had to build so that the hills could grow back to life and our economy as well as our lives could improve.
The results exceeded even the designer's imagination. And have spurred global interest in the potential of large-scale restoration. One place that is following China's example is Rwanda.
One target is to make sure that we have mapped all those degraded ecosystems and starting by rehabilitating them so they can recover their functions. So I think if we manage to make sure that Gishwati is rehabilitated, maybe why not Rugezi, why not all those hills which are rarely empty, when we can afforest them, plant for, we can be a leader. You can't be a leader when you only talk.
The country that depends on agriculture also needs a functioning ecosystem. Our country is hilly. Our agricultural system is at the hill slopes, and in so doing, with the heavy precipitation, we are prone to soil erosion. So, tree planting in this respect is very important in stabilizing soils and also maintaining the water balance.
Here we are in Nyakiriba, and as you see, we have been planting trees. Such species like arenas, agroforestry trees, and up here you see also some trees growing, new trees which have been planted in the last days. So this area is intended to use as a forest land.
Science all over the world is taking up the challenge to provide farmers with drought-resistant crops and new ways for caring for the land.
This experiment has been here since 1991, and we saw that after almost 20 years we had 43 tons per hectare more carbon in the top 60 centimeters for conservation agriculture compared to the conventional practice.
Particularly if we look at native maises from very drought-prone areas, we're hoping to be able to identify alleles within genes that are particularly good or particularly interesting in drought resistance or heat resistance. So we're also using help from GIS experts in identifying locations where we can find particular native maises to screen for drought resistance. And then if we identify those alleles, they can be moved rapidly into breeding materials and characterized.
Microscopic dimensions can have transcontinental effects.
We have a shuttle program in which we take the materials from Mexico, we send them to East Africa, screening it for resistance to that particular disease in East Africa, and then from that point we'll distribute it worldwide to national programs to evaluate for their own conditions.
Free exchange of knowledge is essential when consequences impact everyone.
因为我们知道，在全球暖干化的这样的一个气候变化背景下，尤其在对于我们国家北方区域来说，干旱将会是常态化。因此呢，我们的研究将会更进一步的集中在如何呢，更好的利用已有的水资源。
Another finding encapsulates an essential idea for the future of farming.
如果大家都能认识有机的话，化学东西就少用了。化学东西少用的话，一些比如说工业方面的，比如说石油或者是需要碳的这些能源的消耗就会减少，也就是利用大自然的力量、大自然的资源来做一个碳循环的利用。
According to the FAO, the potential for carbon sequestration in soils is estimated at 5.5 gigatons annually with restoration and improved land management practices. This is equivalent to 13% of current emissions from all sectors. The problems we face from climate change are not mysterious. They're the logical outcome of our behavior. We've reduced biodiversity, and this has caused a reduction in biomass. This means we've lowered photosynthesis, so there's less oxygen being released and less carbon being absorbed. This has also necessitated that we've reduced the accumulation of organic matter. This is the microbiologic habitat, which is releasing and recycling nutrients, which is the basis of soil fertility. And we've massively altered infiltration and retention of rainfall, which naturally regulates hydrology, weather, and climate. We badly need to reverse these trends. Farmers and scientists are demonstrating that using climate-smart agriculture based on large-scale ecosystem revitalization can increase farm yields, make the land and the people more resilient, and ensure that agriculture is a vital part of the solution to climate change.
We have been investing a lot of resources to generate information. Now farmers need it now. So investing in research and investing in applied science for agriculture is mandatory. We'll have to make it now.
循环利用是一个很重要的一个问题，那所以有机农业是一个方法。
For far too long, ecosystem functions have not been considered in the global balance sheet. This is simply wrong. It's part of the problem that caused the degradation. If ecosystems are worth nothing, it's both hard and expensive to protect them. If they are infinitely valuable, it becomes impossible to degrade them. And to conserve ecosystems is to protect wealth, and to restore them is to increase wealth.
I believe we are at a point in history where we have no excuse for continuing to treat the land and the ecosystems the way we do. 50 years ago, this was a different story. But today we live in an environment at an age with a level of technology, with a level of knowledge and experience, with a level of funding that's available in principle, that we can change the way we do this. There is no excuse. Also previously, there weren't any very good examples around the world on a large scale to show that actually it's doable, it's financeable, it's sustainable, it's manageable, in real time with real people. I think it's different today. It's very hard to turn around and say, well, we really would like to, but we can't.